The day of the wedding, the big screen suddenly flashed a video of my wife cheating with her lover. Amid the roar of laughter from the guests, I tore the wedding ring from my own finger. 3 months later, she was on her knees in a downpour, begging for my forgiveness, while I held my new love and watched the news of her bankruptcy. Her lover had it worse. As the virus I planted dismantled his family corporation, he was screaming in a county jail cell, busted in a live-streamed prostitution sting. On the day the court auctioned off his last mansion, my new bride swore under the sun, "This time, let me be the one to cherish you for a lifetime." Chapter 1. The deafening chords of the wedding march still echoed through the gilded ballroom of the Grand Majestic Hotel, the air thick with the cloying sweetness of champagne and the fragrance of expensive flowers. Guests wore standardized smiles of congratulations, a glittering sea of couture and clinking glasses. Ethan Hayes stood at the end of the aisle, watching my bride, Ava Thompson. She was wearing the custom Vera Wang gown I'd flown to Paris 3 times to finalize. Its layers of ivory lace and sweeping train made her look like an angel who had descended from the clouds. The spotlight caught her perfectly made-up face, and her almond-shaped eyes, always brimming with tenderness, were shockingly bright. She looked past the crowd, her gaze fixed on me, her red lips curved into a shy, blissful smile. The officiant, a local celebrity MC known for his sentimental flair, was painting a dramatic picture of our long love story, from our college days to this very moment, spinning a tale of destiny fulfilled. And now, let us once again offer our warmest applause to congratulate this couple, who, after weathering every storm, have finally joined hands to enter the sacred institution of marriage. "Mr. Ethan Hayes, do you take?" The officiant turned to me, holding out the microphone. I took a deep breath, my chest filled with a vast, almost unreal sense of contentment. 7 years. From the day she handed me a bottle of water on the university basketball court to this moment, she was finally about to become my wife. I cleared my throat, ready to say the 2 sacred words. A short, sharp gasp tore through the romantic bubble. It wasn't from the officiant nor an emotional guest. It came from right beside me, from my bride, Ava. The color drained from her face, leaving it whiter than her dress. The eyes that had just been filled with love were now wide with pure terror, locked on a massive LED screen behind me. The screen meant to be playing a slideshow of our engagement photos and childhood memories. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably, her lips quivering, unable to form a single word. All that escaped her throat was a strangled, death-rattle gasp. I whipped my head around, following her horrified gaze. In that instant, my heart felt like it was seized by an ice-cold iron fist and crushed. On the screen, there was no professionally edited tribute to our love. The footage was grainy, shot from a hidden angle, the lighting dim and sordid. The background was clearly a hotel room, rumpled sheets, clothes strewn on the floor. And in the center of the frame, a graphic, X-rated sex tape was playing out. The woman's pale back was arched like a bow, her long, dark curls a mess against the pillows. A man's thick arms were clamped around her waist, his movements crude and primal. Though the woman's face was buried in a pillow, I knew that hair. I knew the small, light brown mole just below her left shoulder blade that I'd kissed 1,000 times. And I knew that piece of royal blue lace lingerie being violently ripped off and thrown to the foot of the bed. It was the gift I had given her for her birthday last month. She had pouted then, saying it was too sexy and she would only ever wear it for me. The man's grunts, amplified by the ballroom's state-of-the-art sound system, sounded like the roars of an animal, assaulting everyone's eardrums. The woman's suppressed, yet wanton moans echoed with horrifying clarity through the dead-silent hall. And that man, he turned his face toward the camera, a triumphant, twisted smirk on his lips. I would recognize that face even if it were burned to ash. Chad Miller. Ava's so-called childhood friend, the man she described as being like a brother to me. His father was in the same chamber of commerce as mine. His family had a construction supply company, a little bit of money, and he spent his days chasing women, coasting on his decent looks and slick personality. Ava had once defended him to me, saying he just likes to have fun, but he's a good guy. So this was their brother-sister relationship. Time seemed to freeze. The air, which moments ago had been filled with sweetness and blessings, shattered into a million sharp pieces of ice, stabbing in my eyes, piercing my heart. A tidal wave of humiliation, hot as lava, surged to my head, incinerating all reason. Whoa! From some corner of the room, a young guy couldn't hold it in, letting out an exclamation dripping with mockery and morbid excitement. That sound was the spark that hit the gasoline. Oh my God! Is that Ava? And isn't that the Miller kid? Wow, you just never know. She always seemed so innocent. Damn, the Hayes family is going to be a laughingstock. Playing this at the wedding. Get a video. This is insane. The silence erupted into a deafening roar of whispers, gasps, suppressed laughter, and the clicking of phone cameras. Hundreds of eyes, curious, contemptuous, pitying, gloating, burned into me and Ava like branding irons. I felt like a clown, stripped naked and nailed to a pillar of shame. No, it's not real. Ethan, let me explain. Ava finally found her voice, lunging at me, her manicured nails digging into my arm. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her expensive makeup and leaving 2 wretched black streaks. It's fake. It's a deep fake. Someone is trying to ruin me. Ethan, you have to believe me. Her voice was a desperate, ragged cry, her body shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. Explain? A deep fake? With that video, with that mole as ironclad proof? I looked down at the hand gripping my arm. This was the same hand that had gently adjusted my tie just hours ago, and now it felt utterly filthy. A wave of nausea churned in my stomach. Get off me! I violently threw her off. The force sent her stumbling backward in her high heels, and she collapsed to the floor. Her pristine white dress was instantly stained with spilled wine and dirt, like a flower trampled into the mud. I didn't even spare her a second glance. All my senses, all my fury, were focused on the ring on my left hand. The platinum wedding band, placed there only minutes ago, a symbol of what I thought was an unbreakable future. Now it felt like a searing hot circlet burning my skin, my soul. Shame, betrayal, a monstrous rage roared through my veins. I yanked my hand up and ripped the ring from my finger. The hard edge of the metal tore my skin, drawing blood, but I felt no pain. Ethan, don't. Ava shrieked from the floor. Too late. Before the horrified eyes of every guest, before countless flashing phone cameras, I summoned every ounce of my strength and hurled the ring, still warm with my body heat and stained with my blood, at the polished marble floor. Clang, skitter, skitter. The crisp, piercing sound of metal hitting stone, followed by the frantic bouncing and rolling of the ring, echoed through the cavernous, silent ballroom. It was the sound of my heart shattering, the death knell of my life as I knew it. The ring finally came to rest in a puddle of spilled champagne, its luster gone. I lifted my head, my bloodshot eyes sweeping over the colorless, quivering mess that was Ava, then over the guests with their varied, flickering expressions. Finally, my gaze locked onto a figure in the corner of the ballroom, a tall, thin man in a hotel waiter's uniform, who was trying to slip away unnoticed. It was him. He was the one acting suspiciously when they were setting up the equipment. I recognized him. Stop! My voice was a raw, broken rasp, but it carried a chilling, murderous intent. The figure froze. I pushed past my parents and the officiant as they tried to calm me down. Like a wounded lion, I stalked toward that waiter, my steps heavy with a crushing fury. Each step landed on the shards of my own broken heart, and on the bated breath of everyone in the room. My wedding, my love, my life, all of it had just been painted blood red. That bastard pulling the strings, Chad Miller, and this accomplice right here. I wouldn't let a single one of them get away. A debt of blood was about to be paid in blood. Chapter 2, the heavy, gilded doors of the Grand Majestic slammed shut behind me with a resounding boom, sealing off the sickening chaos and whispers within. A cold rain had started to fall, fine and sharp as needles, carrying the biting chill of late autumn. It quickly soaked through my expensive tuxedo, which now felt as heavy and confining as a burial shroud. My driver, Frank, pulled the car up silently, a black Cadillac Escalade that sat like a silent beast at the curb. He scrambled out with a large umbrella, his face a mask of worry and shock. "Mister," Mr. Hayes. He looked at my ashen face and bloodshot eyes, and the rest of his words died in his throat. I ignored him and the umbrella, wrenching open the back door and throwing myself into the seat like a sack of garbage. The expensive leather was cold and slick. The lingering scent of Ava's sweet perfume still hung in the air, triggering a violent wave of nausea. I slammed the button to lower the window, and the cold, damp city air rushed in, diluting the suffocating fragrance but doing nothing to extinguish the toxic fire raging in my chest. My phone vibrated relentlessly in my pocket, the screen lighting up and going dark in a maddening rhythm. Familiar names flashed across the screen: Dad, Mom, my closest friends, and Ava. Her name was like a needle in my eye. I ripped the cover off, tore out the battery, and threw the cold piece of metal onto the plush carpeting at my feet. The world finally went quiet, leaving only the low growl of the engine and the monotonous drumming of rain against the window. The car pulled away from the hotel, merging into the evening city traffic. Neon lights smeared across the wet pavement in long, distorted streaks like bleeding wounds. The world outside the window was a blur, cold, loud, and utterly disconnected from me. Frank glanced at me a few times in the rearview mirror, his mouth half open to speak, but he said nothing, quietly turning the heat up to full blast. We arrived at the penthouse, the place in the heart of the city that was supposed to have been our marital home. Pushing the door open, I was assaulted by the festive atmosphere. Confetti from a pre-wedding celebration littered the foyer. Expensive gifts from friends were piled on the living room coffee table. On the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, bright red cutouts of celebratory words seemed to mock me against the rainy, dark skyline. Every corner of this place was tainted with her presence. The fuzzy pillows she loved on the sofa, the European-style candle holders she picked for the dining table, the array of cute kitchen gadgets she'd bought for the open-plan kitchen. Even the air stubbornly held the faint scent of her favorite body wash. Hours ago, all of this had represented my every hope for a happy future. Now, it was all just a collection of sharp, cruel instruments of torture, methodically flaying what was left of my sanity. I walked to the window and stared out at the city below, a glittering, cold necropolis shrouded in rain. My reflection was a faint, ghostly image on the glass, hair plastered to my forehead, face pale as a sheet, eyes burning with a terrifying crimson light, lips pressed into a hard, unforgiving line. My tuxedo was ripped open at the collar, revealing the tense lines of my neck, the very picture of a man consumed by rage and humiliation. The fury was a molten river roaring through my veins, threatening to shatter my skull. I wanted to destroy everything in sight. I wanted to rip those mocking decorations to shreds. I wanted to throw everything that held her sin out the window and set it on fire. I wanted to find Chad Miller right now and tear him apart with my bare hands. But a single cold thread of reason held me back. Smash, rip, burn. That would be letting them off too easy. That bastard Chad Miller dared to pull a stunt like this at my wedding because he was leaning on his father's money, on the network the Miller family had built over the years. He wanted to see me, Ethan Hayes, utterly humiliated, broken, the laughingstock of our entire social circle. And Ava, 7 years, 7 whole years of a relationship, and she could lie in my arms planning our future while writhing under another man. What did she take me for? A complete and utter fool? An ATM to fund her lifestyle and provide her with a stable, respectable life. A metallic taste rose in my throat. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms, using the sharp pain to force myself to think clearly. This destructive rage needed an outlet, but not some pointless act of self-destruction or a brutish physical assault. That was too simple, too unsatisfying. What I wanted was total, methodical annihilation. I wanted to watch them slowly rot in their own despair. I wanted them to lose everything they cared about, to feel what it's like to fall from the heavens into the gutter, to be despised by everyone, to wish they were dead. What did Chad Miller care about most? His pretty boy face? The fawning of his sycophantic friends? No, that was all superficial. What he truly cared about was the source of his arrogance. The Miller family money, their company, Miller Construction Supplies. That was the empire his father, Richard Miller, had spent a lifetime building. It was his golden ticket, his shield. And Ava? What did she want when she so carefully maneuvered her way into my life, into the Hayes family? A life of luxury, a respectable status, the envy of everyone she met. She was vain to her very core. If I stripped away the glittering title of the future Mrs. Hayes, left her broke and disgraced, a social pariah, for her, that would be a fate worse than death. A cold, ruthless plan began to take shape in my fevered mind, like a predator in the dark slowly opening its blood-red eyes. I took out my backup phone and powered it on. The screen lit up with dozens of missed calls and a flood of texts. I ignored all the messages from concerned family and friends, found a specific number, and dialed. The call was answered after 2 rings. A calm, professional male voice came on the line. "Mr. Hayes?" It was my personal assistant and most trusted confidant, David Shun. He had clearly already heard what happened at the wedding. His voice was tight, with a barely concealed tension. "David," my voice was a cold, flat rasp, like a blade scraped over ice. "2 things. First, I need you to find people, the best people, and put a tail on Chad Miller. I want to know his every move, 24/7. Who he meets, who he calls, what women he's with. I want to know how many times a day he takes a piss. I especially want everything on his dealings at Miller Construction. Every account, every contract, every wire transfer. Dig. Dig until you hit bone. I want every single dirty secret he has." There was a moment of silence on the other end, David clearly taken aback by the chilling command. But he was a professional. "Understood, Mr. Hayes. I'll handle it myself. I'll use the most reliable people and the most discreet methods. What's the second thing?" I walked to the bar and poured a glass of the strongest whiskey. The amber liquid swirled, reflecting the bottomless cold in my eyes. "Second," I tilted my head back and let the fiery liquid burn its way down my throat. "I want you to find the tall, thin waiter from the Grand Majestic who is handling the AV equipment for the ballroom today. I want a name, an address, his family situation, any weaknesses. Find him and secure him. I want to know who paid him, how they made contact, how much he got. I want every last detail." "Yes, sir." David's reply was firm. "Mr. Hayes, please take care of yourself." "I'm fine," I said coldly, ending the call and setting the empty glass down hard on the counter. Take care of myself? My heart had already been torn to shreds. What did my body matter now? The only thing keeping me going was the roaring, toxic flame of revenge. I went in my study and opened my laptop. The screen's glow illuminated my expressionless face. I opened an encrypted folder and pulled up the last 3 years of Miller Construction's public financial statements and some market intel I had gathered over time. Old man Richard Miller was a sly fox. His books looked clean on the surface. But Chad? That arrogant fool had a token VP title and had undoubtedly used his position to skim money and get involved in shady, off-the-books deals. I had ignored it before, out of respect for Ava and a general desire to keep things civil in our business circles. Now all of it would become the poison-tipped dagger aimed at the heart of the Miller family. The clicking of the mouse was the only sound in the dead silent study. Like a cold, patient hunter, I began to lay the first threads of my invisible web. The screen's glow reflected the focused, manic light in my eyes. Outside, the rain continued to fall. The city's neon lights glittered with cold indifference. Ethan Hayes' wedding was over. But for Chad Miller and Ava Thompson, hell was just beginning. Time became a blunt, rusty knife, slowly carving its way through the days, each one defined by a vast, silent fury. A week had passed since the bloody wedding. I didn't have the breakdown everyone expected. I didn't descend into a drunken stupor or go on a rampage. On the contrary, I appeared unervingly calm. I calmly went back to the office to handle my workload, calmly attended business dinners I couldn't get out of, and calmly absorbed the looks of pity, curiosity, and schadenfreude that followed me everywhere. At one small chamber of commerce mixer, I even ran into a beaming Richard Miller and his precious son, Chad. "Ethan, my boy, that business the other day. What a terrible shame. A disgrace to the family." Richard Miller approached me, glass in hand, his face a mask of overwrought grief. "That Ava, we watch her grow up, you know. Who knew?" "Sigh, don't you worry. I've given Chad a serious talking to. He's just young and foolish, got led astray by that girl." Chad stood behind his father, dressed in a flashy burgundy velvet blazer, his hair slicked back with too much product. He wore a contrived look of remorse, but his eyes were full of unconcealed smugness and provocation. He had the gall to raise his glass to me. "Ethan, my man, I'm sorry. I had a little too much to drink. Things got out of hand. I'll make it up to you, buy you a drink sometime." His tone was flippant, completely insincere, as if the fiasco that had destroyed my life was just a harmless prank. My fingers tightened around my champagne flute, the glass cold against my skin. I forced a faint, detached smile onto my face, a carefully constructed mask. "Don't worry about it, Mr. Miller." My voice was steady, betraying no emotion. I glanced past Chad's repulsive face. "It's a small thing. Already forgotten. Business is more important." Richard Miller was clearly surprised by my magnanimity. He blinked, then his smile grew wider. Yes, you're right, my boy. Business is what matters. Our two families have plenty of opportunities to work together in the future. That new parcel of land Miller Construction just acquired in South Harbor, the prospects are." I gave a slight nod, turned elegantly, and walked away, leaving the vile, hypocritical duo behind me. The second my back was turned, the icy composure in my eyes shattered, replaced by a murderous rage. "Make it up to me? Work together? Chad, your days of gloating are numbered. And that land? It will be the first shovelful of dirt on your family's grave." My calm was a facade, the eerie silence before a hurricane. Beneath the surface, the gears of my revenge, set in motion by David Chin's efficient work, were already grinding away. Late that night, my study was lit by a single desk lamp. On my monitor was an encrypted file David had just sent. I opened it. It was filled with high-resolution photos and several video clips. The star of the show was, without fail, Chad Miller. The time frame was the week following the wedding. The locations ranged from VIP rooms at exclusive clubs and private yachts to a clandestine high-stakes poker game. In the images, he was surrounded by scantily clad women, laughing, kissing, his behavior utterly debauched. In a few photos, he was accepting small, sealed plastic baggies of a suspicious white powder from a shady-looking character. In others, he sat at a smoke-filled poker table, a mountain of chips in front of him, his expression manic and greedy. The videos were even more damning. One, shot in the cabin of a yacht, showed him clearly high on cocaine, engaged in depraved acts with two women, his language filthy. Another was from the VIP room of the poker game. He was on a losing streak, violently shoving aside a friend, trying to calm him down, while screaming into his phone. "Wire me another 50 grand. Now, I'm good for it. Do I look like a guy who welshes on a bet? What? My dad froze the account? Shit. You tell him if he doesn't give me the money, I'll leak how he embezzled project funds to cover his own Macau gambling debts. We'll see how he likes that." His voice was hysterical, unhinged. Looking at this mountain of evidence, a cold smirk touched my lips. Chad Miller, a bona fide degenerate and a fool. Drugs, gambling, prostitutes, he had it all, and he was stupid enough to leave a trail. His clever father probably had no idea how quickly and how foolishly his precious son was dragging the entire company into the abyss. And this was just the appetizer. I closed the disgusting files and opened another folder labeled Hotel Waiter. Inside was David's report. The waiter who played the video at the wedding was named Kevin Rodriguez. He was a migrant worker from a poor rural town, had been at the hotel for 3 years, and had a reputation for being quiet and diligent. He had a younger sister in high school back home, a straight-A student, but the family was dirt poor. He worked constantly to support her education. The report showed that 3 days before the wedding, his father, who had been bedridden for years, was suddenly admitted to the city's best private hospital, placed in a VIP room, and an anonymous deposit large enough to cover all his expensive treatments appeared in his account. At the same time, his sister's school received a sizable anonymous donation for a scholarship, which was immediately awarded to her. Kevin's own bank account was clean, but under the floorboards of his rundown apartment in a low-income neighborhood in Queens, David's people found a thick, sealed envelope containing $10,000 in crisp new bills. The picture was clear. Someone had used his father's health and his sister's future to buy his loyalty for that one fatal act at my wedding. "Mr. Hayes," David's call came right on cue. His voice was tired but steady. We have Kevin Rodriguez in a safe place. He was terrified. Didn't take much for him to spill everything. The man who gave him the instructions was one of Chad Miller's guys, a street tough named Rico. The handoff happened in the back room of an internet cafe. It was cash, and the instructions were simple. Plug a USB drive into a backup port right before you and Ms. Thompson were supposed to exchange rings. He claims he was just told it would embarrass you. He had no idea the content was so vicious. Rico. I repeated the name, a dangerous glint in my eye. Can you find him? It's tricky, David said. He's a ghost. No fixed address. Knows how to stay off the grid. He skipped town the day after the wedding. Looks like Chad paid him well to disappear for a while. My people are on his trail. Keep digging. I want him found, dead or alive. My voice was hard. As for Kevin, keep him comfortable. Don't touch him for now. Tell him that as long as he keeps his mouth shut, I will personally see to it that his father and sister get the best care and education possible. But if he tries anything, or if one word of this gets out, I didn't need to finish. The cold threat was clear. Understood. After hanging up, the study was silent again. The chain of evidence was growing, link by link. But it wasn't enough. I didn't just want Chad to go to prison for a few years. I wanted the Miller family to be utterly destroyed. I wanted Chad to be disgraced, destitute, and left with nothing but a living hell. My gaze fell upon an encrypted icon on my desktop. It was my connection to a top-tier cybersecurity expert I had hired through anonymous channels, a hacker who went by the codename Hydra. He had just sent confirmation. The custom logic bomb virus, codenamed Data Eater, had been successfully planted deep within Miller Construction's core financial systems and was now dormant. Hydra's fee was astronomical, but his skills were unparalleled. The virus was a digital time bomb. Once activated remotely, it would silently corrupt all of Miller Construction's core financial data, fabricating massive, inexplicable deficits and illegal transactions. At the same time, it would copy and package every dirty internal document, evidence of bribes, tax evasion, shell corporations, and schedule a delayed release to the SEC, the FBI, and every major financial news outlet. The detonation key was now in my hands. I moved the cursor, my fingertip hovering over the red, skull and crossbones activate button. One click, and the business empire the Millers were so proud of would begin to rot and collapse from the inside out. But I didn't click. The time wasn't right. Chad's personal implosion hadn't reached its climax yet. I needed to wait until he was completely rotten, until his father was at his wit's end, until Miller Construction was showing more cracks from Chad's own stupidity. Then I would deliver the killing blow. That would be true despair. Revenge requires patience. The hunter must wait for the prey to walk into the perfect trap. Just then, the sharp buzz of the building's video intercom shattered the silence. I frowned. Who could it be this late? I walked to the foyer and looked at the screen. It was Ava. Her face was pale and gaunt, her hair soaked and plastered to her skin by the rain. Her once bright eyes were red and swollen, filled with a desperate, pleading look. She was standing just outside the shelter of the building's luxurious awning, shivering in the cold autumn night, wearing only a thin trench coat. She looked at the camera, her lips trembling, her voice coming through the speaker, broken and choked with sobs. "Ethan, please, open the door. I know I was wrong. I was so wrong. Just listen to me, please. Just for 5 minutes. No, 3 minutes. I'm begging you, Ethan. It's so cold out here. I'm so scared." She was sobbing hysterically, like a stray cat abandoned in the storm. I watched her pathetic display on the screen, watched the tears that had once captivated me now fill me with nothing but disgust. My heart was a block of ice. There was no anger, no sadness, just a cold, clinical calm. Explain? What was there to explain? The graphic video, the mole I had kissed 1,000 times, Chad Miller's leering face. What part of that needed an explanation? Scared? Cold. Compared to the public execution I had endured at my own wedding, a little cold and fear was nothing. My face expressionless, I reached out. I didn't press the button to talk, nor the one to open the door. I coldly and decisively pressed the small icon in the bottom corner of the screen. Block. The screen flickered, and Ava's desperate, crying face was replaced by a blank, lifeless blue. The sound of her pleas from outside was instantly silenced by the heavy, soundproof door. The world was quiet again. I turned and walked back to the study, sitting down in front of the computer. The activation screen for the Data Eater virus still glowed with a cold, pale light. The flames of vengeance burned silently and fiercely in my eyes, illuminating the dark room. Don't worry, Ava. Your hell is coming too. Chapter 4. Lately, Chad Miller had been very busy. He was busy enjoying his newfound status and basking in the glow of what he believed was his own success. The new development project in South Harbor, which had been stalled by zoning issues, was suddenly fast-tracked. Permits that had been tied up in red tape for months were miraculously approved. The bank loan came through with an interest rate so favorable it was almost unbelievable. His father, Richard Miller, was ecstatic. He clapped Chad on the back, praising him for finally growing up and taking charge, and promptly handed him control of the entire project, along with a massive budget for operational expenses. Chad felt like fate was on his side. Ethan Hayes was now a citywide joke, while he, Chad Miller, had gained a reputation in his circle as a player, a guy who gets things done. Miller Construction stock had even seen a small bump. With power and money in his hands, the arrogance his father had briefly suppressed now roared back to life like a wildfire. Ethan, please. The guy's a walking punchline. He bragged to his sycophantic friends in the VIP section of Rain, the city's most exclusive nightclub. He had a new model on his arm. Just you watch. I'm going to make the South Harbor project the new landmark of this city. When I'm done, that loser won't even be worthy of shining my shoes. The room was thick with smoke and the thump of electronic music. A bleach-blonde follower eagerly handed him a drink. You're the man, Chad. I bet Hayes is at home, crying into his pillow. He's got none of your vision. Damn right. I heard the profit margins on this project are insane. Don't forget about us when you're rolling in it, bro. Another one chimed in. Chad took a triumphant swig of his drink and waved a dismissive hand. Of course not. We're all brothers here. Stick with me, and you'll all get a piece. He lowered his voice, feigning modesty. This is what power looks like. The Hayes family? Sure, Ethan's got money, but could he have pushed through those permits so fast? Could he have gotten that loan? No way. He had no idea, of course, that all this good fortune, all the doors that were swinging open for him, were being expertly manipulated by an invisible hand. David Shun had activated a network of deep-level political contacts the Hayes family rarely used, even going so far as to have a subsidiary of my company act as an anonymous guarantor for the Miller loan. The bank president who approved the loan was an old mentee of my father's. One phone call was all it took. It was all designed for a single purpose: to inflate Chad's ego, to make him reckless, to encourage him to bet everything on this project, which looked magnificent on the outside, but was built on a foundation I was about to shatter. The low-interest loan was the poison bait, and he had swallowed it whole. He was hopelessly hooked. Lost in a delusion of grandeur, he spent money like it was water. The women on his arm changed weekly. The project funds began to suffer from unforeseen expenses, large sums diverted to cover his escalating gambling debts, justified as relocation fees for a few holdout property owners. He set up shell corporations to build the project for non-existent consulting services, funneling millions into an offshore account. He thought he was being clever, covering his tracks with fake invoices and launder transactions. It was his father's company, he reasoned, and it would all be his one day anyway. What was wrong with taking an advance? He was completely oblivious to the fact that every single transaction, every fake contract, was being silently monitored, copied, and archived by the Data Eater virus embedded deep in the company's servers. When David presented me with the latest folder of neatly organized evidence, his summary was 4 simple words: the pig is in the pen. The time was fast approaching. Meanwhile, another trap was slowly tightening. Ava's life had fallen off a cliff. The wedding scandal went viral in our social circles. Her so-called best friends blocked her number. The exclusive social groups she belonged to kicked her out. Even the high-end boutiques where she used to shop treated her like a ghost. My family's wrath was absolute. My mother had made it clear that anyone who helped Ava was an enemy of the Hayes family. The scandal even reached her parents' small business in their hometown. Customers vanished, and her parents, furious and ashamed, called her screaming, disowning her, telling her she was a disgrace. She was living in a cheap, small apartment, her funds cut off, surviving by selling the jewelry and designer bags I had once bought her. The pawn shops gave her pennies on the dollar. The psychological toll was immense. She grew thin and haggard, the light gone from her eyes. She tried desperately to contact me. The messages started as tearful apologies, escalated to hysterical accusations, then devolved into pathetic, empty daily texts of good morning and good night, like a robotic ritual of self-flagellation. I had muted her number. Her words fell into a void. She had gone to Chad for help. The first time, he gave her some cash and told her to lay low. The second time, she cornered him outside a nightclub while he was with his new girlfriend. In front of everyone, he shoved her away in disgust. "Get lost, you psycho bitch. Stop bothering me. I'm busy with important things." His friends and new girl laughed as Ava fell to the ground, a piece of trash to be discarded. She had hit rock bottom. Her credit card were maxed out. Her landlord had served her an eviction notice, and she was down to her last pack of ramen noodles when she received a phone call that sounded like a lifeline. "Is this Ms. Ava Thompson?" "This is Apex Financial Solutions," a polite male voice said. "We understand you may be facing some temporary financial challenges. Our firm offers fast, low-interest, no-collateral personal loans. We can often provide funds the same day. Perhaps we can help you get back on your feet." Ava clung to this offer like a drowning woman to a piece of driftwood. "Yes. Really? I need money. I need a lot of money." "Of course, Miss Thompson. Given your former status and credit history, the amount shouldn't be a problem." The voice was smooth, seductive. "Just bring your ID to our office and sign a few papers." Apex Financial was located in a gleaming midtown skyscraper. The office was plush, the staff impeccably dressed. It looked completely legitimate. A smiling, overly friendly man who introduced himself as Mr. King greeted her. "Ms. Thompson, a pleasure to finally meet you," he said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "Don't you worry. These things are always temporary. We can offer you a special rate. $50,000, with a very low monthly interest rate of just 1.5%, paid over 12 months. Very manageable." Ava, dizzy with relief, barely heard the details. All she could think about was paying her rent, buying some decent clothes, and maybe even leaving the country for a while. She didn't bother to read the thick contract with its pages of dense, fine print. With Mr. King's reassuring smile and his promise that it was just a formality, she shakily signed her name. She never noticed the clause in tiny font stating the effective annual percentage rate of 36%, or the one detailing a daily late fee of 5% of the principal balance, or the most lethal one of all. The borrower hereby authorizes the lender to utilize personal social media, employer contacts, and family and friend for the purposes of collections communications to encourage repayment. When she walked out with a debit card loaded with $50,000, the first genuine smile since the wedding spread across her face, she thought she could finally breathe again. She had no idea that the card was a one-way ticket to an even deeper level of hell. And back in his office, the smiling Mr. King's face went cold as he typed out a text message. "The fish has taken the bait." It was delicious. The true owner of Apex Financial Solutions was, of course, no mystery. The predator's noose had been gently placed around her neck. Now all I had to do was wait for the right moment to pull it tight. Revenge continued its cold, silent march, its grinding gears the only sound I could hear. Chad Miller felt like he was on top of the world. The South Harbor project was a massive success. The groundbreaking ceremony was a huge media event, attended by city officials. He stood front and center for the photos, looking every bit the part of a brilliant young tycoon. The press fawned over him, calling him a visionary new force in real estate. Miller Construction's stock price soared. At a board meeting, a proud Richard Miller announced his intention to begin transitioning leadership of the company to his son. The success and adulation went straight to Chad's head, fueling his worst impulses. He was convinced this was all due to his own genius, a reward for having taken down Ethan Hayes. His spending became legendary. He chartered a 100-foot yacht for a week-long party, flying in models from Miami. He lost over $1 million in a single night at a private poker game in Atlantic City and drunkenly boasted he'd win it back the next day. His drug use escalated, and he'd often be found passed out in the VIP sections of clubs, a pathetic mess. His most fatal flaw, however, was his insatiable need for cash. The South Harbor project was a financial black hole. Construction costs were spiraling, and the hole from his embezzling was growing larger. He started bleeding the company dry, creating more complex schemes to launder money, even siphoning funds from Miller Construction's other, more stable projects. Dad, we're at a critical phase. I need another $5 million. Just $5 million. The first round of pre-sales will cover it next month. I swear, he pleaded into the phone to his father, his voice a mixture of urgency and unshakable confidence. Richard Miller, initially hesitant, looked at the rising stock price and the glowing media profiles of his son and relented, wiring the money. He didn't know that more than half of it would be in a casino's account by morning. Chad was a madman dancing on a tightrope over a chasm, so dazzled by the imaginary stars above that he never looked down. And he never forgot about me. At the height of his arrogance, he loved to use my humiliation as a stepping stone. At a real estate industry gala, surrounded by his usual entourage, he deliberately made his way over to me as I stood alone in a corner. His face was flushed, his eyes manic and dilated. He was clearly high. Well, if it isn't Ethan, his voice was loud, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. What's the matter, man? Drowning your sorrows? Hey, cheer up. It's just a woman. Plenty of fish in the sea. Look at me. I'm having the time of my life. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, then leaned in close, his breath reeking of whiskey and cologne. He dropped his voice to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. Actually, I should thank you. Ava. Damn, she was something else. A real freak in the sheets. That video at the wedding? Classic, right? You're welcome, by the way. Had to share that masterpiece with her #1 fan. Ha ha ha. His grating laughter was like a poison dart. The air grew thick. All eyes were on us. My fingers tightened around my glass, the cold biting into my skin. A silent scream of rage built in my chest, but my face remained a mask of cold indifference. I slowly raised my eyes to meet his, my expression as placid as if I were looking at a corpse. Be careful, Chad. My voice was quiet but cut through his laughter. Pride comes before a fall. My calm, and the chilling warning in my words, seemed to douse his manic energy. The smirk on his face froze, then twisted into anger. He looked ready to explode, but just then, his phone began to vibrate violently. He irritably pulled it out. It was his company's CFO. What the hell do you want? He snarled into the phone. I told you not to bother me unless the building is on fire. The CFO's voice on the other end was a high-pitched, terrified scream, loud enough for me to hear. Chad, it's a catastrophe. Our core financial systems have been breached. All the data, it's all corrupted. The books are showing a deficit of over $200 million. And there are records of illegal transactions we never made. The banks just called. They've frozen our credit lines. They're demanding an immediate explanation. The SEC and the FBI are on their way to the office right now. What? The blood drained from Chad's face, the drug-induced flush replaced by a deathly pallor. His hand trembled so badly he could barely hold the phone. No, you're lying. That's impossible. The system is secure. Before he could finish, his other phone rang. It was his father. He fumbled to answer it. Dad! Richard Miller's voice erupted from the speaker, a roar of pure, apoplectic rage that echoed through the stunned silence. Chad, you worthless bastard. What did you do? What the hell did you do behind my back? It's over. Everything is over. Miller Construction is finished. My entire life's work. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Chad looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. The phone slipped from his grasp and shattered on the floor. His face twitched, his eyes wide with a terror so profound it was paralyzing. The brilliant young tycoon of a moment ago was now just a crumbling wreck. The room exploded in a cacophony of gasps and frantic whispers. I watched his complete and utter unraveling, then calmly raised my glass and drained the last of the cold liquid. The burn in my throat was a sweet, satisfying prelude to vengeance. The Data Eater virus was active, and this was only the beginning of the collapse. I set down my empty glass, turned my back on the pathetic creature who was now the center of a chaotic storm, and walked out of the gala. Behind me, I could hear Chad's broken sobs and the rising buzz of the crowd. Stepping out into the cold night air, I took out my phone and sent a 2-word text to David Chun. Reel it in. The Miller family's destruction was now on a countdown. And for Ava, the noose was about to be pulled tight. Chapter 6: The sky fell on Miller Construction. The financial black hole and fraudulent transaction records created by the Data Eater virus were like a nuclear bomb detonated in the heart of the company. A joint task force from the SEC and the FBI raided their headquarters, seizing servers and freezing all accounts. The banks called in their loans, suppliers mobbed the entrance demanding payment, construction sites ground to a halt, and employees began to riot over unpaid wages. The once mighty Miller Construction, a titan of industry, was paralyzed overnight, teetering on the edge of forced liquidation. The media coverage was a relentless hailstorm. Miller Construction implodes in massive fraud scandal. Deficit may exceed $200 million. SEC and FBI launch investigation. Chairman Richard Miller detained. Heir Chad Miller implicated in illegal deals. Person of interest in federal probe. Miller stock plummets in catastrophic sell-off. Billions in value erased. Richard Miller suffered a massive heart attack as federal agents led him from his office. He was rushed to the ICU, his life hanging by a thread. Chad was, in a way, luckier. He was arrested in the presidential suite of a 5-star hotel, celebrating with 2 prostitutes and a pile of cocaine when a SWAT team kicked in the door. He was high, naked, and utterly incoherent, a pathetic spectacle captured by the TMZ cameras that had miraculously been tipped off. The headlines were brutal. Miller heir busted in drug-fueled prostitution ring as company burns. The Miller family was finished. The rats fled the sinking ship. Friends who had once sung their praises now pretended they never knew them, or worse, joined the chorus of condemnation. Their mansions, luxury cars, and private yacht were seized, destined for auction to pay off a fraction of their colossal debt. In a holding cell, Chad reportedly had a complete psychotic break, screaming and clawing at the walls until he had to be restrained. He was facing a litany of federal charges that would put him away for decades. The spectacular collapse was the biggest news story of the year, a drama that played out across every screen. In the face of such a monumental downfall, the scandal of my wedding now seemed like a forgotten, trivial prologue. On the afternoon that news of the Miller Empire's final collapse broke, a storm that had been brewing for days finally unleashed its fury on the city. A torrential downpour slammed into the concrete and glass, blurring the world into a churning gray chaos. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of my penthouse, a glass of red wine in my hand, watching the storm ravage the city below. Rain streamed down the glass, distorting the distant neon lights into bleeding watercolors. On my phone, a financial news report detailing the latest on the Miller case played softly, the anchor's cold voice echoing in the vast, empty living room. And then the video intercom buzzed. On the screen, it was Ava again. She looked even worse than the last time, a ghost haunting my doorstep. She was soaked to the bone, her thin clothes clinging to her skeletal frame. Her hair was a tangled, wet mess plastered to her deathly pale face, her lips a bruised purple from the cold. She was clutching a manila envelope to her chest, her eyes hollow but burning with a desperate, frantic energy. She wasn't crying this time. She just stared into the camera, her voice a ragged whisper, broken by the roar of the rain. "Ethan, I know you're in there. Open the door. Please, this is the last time. I'm begging you." She looked like a specter about to be dissolved by the storm. I watched her in silence. The thrill of revenge I had anticipated was absent, replaced by a cold, desolate calm. Chad's fate was sealed. Now it was time for her, the origin of it all, to pay her dues. I pressed the talk button. My voice was clipped and emotionless. "What do you want?" Hearing my voice, a flicker of light ignited in her dead eyes. She was a drowning woman who had just spotted a piece of driftwood. She thrust the envelope toward the camera, her words tumbling out in a frantic, incoherent rush. "Ethan, help me. You're the only one who can. Apex, they're going to kill me. 50,000. It's only been a few months. Now, they say I owe them $500,000. $500,000. Where'd I get that kind of money? They said They said they're going to post my pictures everywhere and ruin me. Ethan, for old time's sake, please just pay it off for me. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave for the rest of my life. I'm begging you, Ethan. Her body was racked with violent shivers from the cold, from the terror. She could barely stand. $500,000? The loan sharks were even more efficient than I'd expected. My face was a stone mask. My voice was flat. Ava, there are no old times for us. Your debt is not my problem. No, Ethan, you can't do this to me, she shrieked, her voice cracking with despair. She began pounding on the cold metal intercom panel. I know I was wrong. I was so wrong. It was all Chad. He forced me. He threatened me. He drugged me. He took that video. He ruined me. He ruined you. Ethan, if you want revenge, go after him. I'm innocent. I was a victim, she wailed, trying to shift all the blame onto the man who was already locked away. Innocent? A victim? I let out a short, cold laugh. The way she had eagerly participated in that video, the look of pure ecstasy on her face, that was not the look of a victim. Even now, she was still lying, still trying to play the part of the wronged woman. Save your story for someone who cares, I said coldly, and pressed the block button again. The screen went blank. From outside, I could hear her desperate, ragged screams and the sound of her fists beating against the door, but they were quickly swallowed by the roar of the storm and silenced by the soundproofed walls. I turned, walked back into the living room, picked up my phone, and dialed the number for Mr. King at Apex Financial. He answered instantly. Mr. Hayes, your instructions? Ava Thompson is outside my building. My voice was devoid of emotion. You can begin the collections process. Use the most thorough and effective methods. I want her to become infamous. Understood, Mr. Hayes. Don't you worry. Our service will be top-notch. King's voice was slick with a cruel, sycophantic excitement. I hung up and walked back to the window. The rain was falling even harder now, the world outside a formless, gray void. Ava's screams still echoed in my memory, but soon there would be just another sound lost in the storm. Her hell was just getting started, and this storm of vengeance would finally wash away the stain of my past. Chapter 7: Ava Thompson's life descended into a waking nightmare. The collection methods employed by Apex Financial were insidious, relentless, and brutally effective. The day after I turned her away, her ordeal escalated. First, her phone became unusable. A storm of calls from blocked numbers and burner phones flooded her line, day and night, accompanied by a torrent of abusive texts. Pay your debts, you whore. Ava Thompson, time to sell that body to pay up. Why don't you post some more of those sex tapes? We could all use a laugh. The filth was endless. She was too afraid to turn her phone off, clinging to the sliver of hope that a job offer might come through. But every ring made her jump out of her skin. Next, they took over her digital life. A legion of troll accounts swarmed her social media, spamming every post with comments. Need a deadbeat tracked down? Ask Ava Thompson. This woman owes $500,000. Preys on rich men. We have proof. They attached a candid, unflattering photo of her taken at the Apex office when she signed the loan, along with a cropped image of the contract showing her clear signature. She tried to delete the posts, to block the users, but for every one she removed, 10 more appeared. Her online presence became a public billboard for her shame. Then, the harassment moved into the real world. Men in cheap suits with asset recovery, embroidered on the pockets, began loitering near her rundown apartment building. They never touched her, but they were always there. They'd be smoking in a hallway when she came home, their eyes cold and menacing. They'd slip notes under her door with crude drawings and threats. Her neighbors, initially sympathetic, grew fearful and then contemptuous, shunning her completely. Her landlord served her with a 3-day eviction notice. She was a cornered animal, stripped bare for the world to see and despise. Fear, shame, and despair were cold snakes coiling around her, squeezing the life out of her. She locked herself in her small, musty room, curtains drawn, surviving on the last of her instant noodles. The designer clothes and bag she once cherished lay in a heap in the corner like garbage. She tried calling her parents one last time. Her mother answered, her voice a raw scream of anguish. You curse. Haven't you destroyed us enough? People threw rocks through the windows of our shop. Your father had a stroke from the stress. We don't have a daughter. Get out of our lives. The line went dead. She was utterly and completely alone. That's when Mr. King from Apex made his follow-up call. The pretense of politeness was gone. His voice now a slimy mixture of menace and predatory suggestion. Miss Thompson, you can't hide forever. $500,000, and the interest is piling up every single day. Soon, you won't be able to pay it back even if you sell your organs. But, as a favor to a mutual acquaintance, I might have a solution for you. Ava was curled on the cold floor, her eyes vacant, a hollow shell of a person. Our company has partnerships with several high-end gentlemen's clubs. King's voice hissed like a snake. A woman with your assets could work off that debt in no time. It's a much better option than having a few of my associates visit you, or having us print up flyers with your greatest hits and plaster them all over the city. Don't you think? The word work was a branding iron on her soul. A violent tremor shot through her. The humiliation was so absolute, it was suffocating. Tears she didn't know she had left streamed down her face. No, please, don't, she whimpered. No, King chuckled. Then pay up. I want $50,000 in interest by tomorrow morning. If not, every single one of your relatives and friends will receive a special greeting card in their inbox. I guarantee the contents will be unforgettable. Oh, and you have a cousin in high school back home, right? Pretty girl? A couple of my guys are heading that way on business. They could stop by and say hello. No. Ava's shriek was a raw, animal sound of pure terror. She was shaking so violently she thought she would break apart. Don't touch her. I'll do it. I'll work. The last shred of her dignity, her final ounce of resistance, was obliterated. She collapsed onto the floor, a heap of broken sobs. On the other end of the line, Mr. King smiled. Excellent choice. I'll text you the address. Be at the Gilded Cage at 8 p.m. tonight. And remember, dress to impress. The call ended. The dial tone was a funeral dirge. Ava lay on the filthy floor, staring at a water stain on the ceiling, knowing her life was well and truly over. Ethan, he was so cruel. He wanted her to suffer, to rot in the deepest, most disgusting pit of despair. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the atmosphere could not have been more different. I was in a quiet, elegant cafe, a light jazz melody playing in the background. Across from me sat a young woman named Claire Sullivan. She was like her name, clear, bright. She had a neat, short haircut, a face free of makeup, and healthy, sun-kissed skin. Her eyes were bright and full of life. She was dressed simply in a white t-shirt and jeans, a worn canvas tote bag slung over her chair. She wasn't conventionally beautiful in the way Ava was, but her smile was genuine and warm. We had met at a planning meeting for a new community library project. She was the director of the nonprofit organization, the Starlight Readers Foundation, that was heading the initiative. I was there representing my family's foundation, which was providing the funding. Her presentation had no flashy graphics or buzzwords, just simple, powerful stories about giving kids in low-income neighborhoods a safe place to read. Her passion was palpable. After the calculated deceit of Ava and the vulgar cruelty of Chad, Claire's unadorned authenticity felt like a sudden ray of light piercing through the thick clouds of my life. On an impulse, I had asked for her number under the pretense of discussing project details. This was our first time meeting alone. So, Mr. Hayes, you really think the book stop idea could work? She asked, stirring her latte, her eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. We convert old bus shelters into mini libraries with weatherproof shelves. The cost is low, but it could reach so many kids who can't afford books or get to the main library. Her voice was full of an infectious energy. She was talking about helping children, not about profit margins or social climbing. I lifted my coffee cup. It's a great idea, I said, my voice softer than I'd heard in months. Logistics and maintenance will be key. Perhaps the Hayes Foundation can help with securing locations and volunteers. Really? That would be incredible. Her face lit up, a smile so pure and joyous it was like the sun breaking through the clouds. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. On behalf of the kids, thank you. Her smile was genuine, free of any artifice or agenda. It was as clean and refreshing as a mountain spring. Looking at her, listening to her, I felt the cold, hard knot of hatred that had been lodged in my chest for months begin to melt, just a little. A long-forgotten sense of peace settled over me. I was beginning to realize that the only way out of the darkness wasn't just to drag your enemies down with you. Sometimes it was to let a little light in. The fires of my revenge were still smoldering, but next to them, a small, warm candle had just been lit. Chapter 8 Winter arrived, sharp and clear. The auction for the assets of Miller Construction was held at the city's main convention center. The mansion's luxury cars and antique art that had once been symbols of power and wealth were now tagged with cold, numbered labels, waiting to be sold off for pennies on the dollar to cover a fraction of the family's colossal debt. The auction hall was packed. I sat in an inconspicuous corner, dressed in a black wool overcoat, my expression unreadable. David sat beside me, giving me a final update in a low voice. Richard Miller passed away in the ICU early yesterday morning. Multiple organ failure. Chad had a complete breakdown, tried to hang himself in a cell. He's been transferred to a secure psychiatric hospital. His case is on hold pending a competency evaluation, but he's looking at a minimum of 10 years. After liquidation, the company is still deep in the red. The banks and suppliers are taking a huge loss. I nodded slowly, my eyes on the stage. They were auctioning the final crown jewel of the Miller estate, their sprawling waterfront mansion in Greenwich. The bidding started at a shockingly low price. Going once, going twice. Sold. To the gentleman in the back, the auctioneer's gavel fell. The Miller family's last footprint in the city had been erased. It was over. There was no rush of elation, just a profound sense of release. It felt like finishing a long, exhausting journey. Chad was broken. His family's legacy turned to dust. The immense weight that had been pressing down on my soul for months was finally gone. I stepped out of the stuffy auction hall into the bright, cold sunlight. I took a deep breath of the crisp air, pulled out my phone, and dialed Mr. King. "The collections on Ava Thompson can stop," I said, my voice flat. "Her remaining debt is canceled. Let her go." King was momentarily silent, surprised. "Yes, of course, Mr. Hayes. You're a merciful man. I'll take care of it immediately. She'll disappear." Merciful? I smirked. I had let her stew in her own personal hell, forced her to confront the depths of humiliation and despair until her spirit was completely broken. Now, letting her crawl away was the final act of my revenge. To let her live with the scars, a ghost of her former self, was a punishment far more fitting than simply destroying her. As for Rico, Chad's enforcer, David's people had finally tracked him down to a gambling den in Southeast Asia. He had lost all his money and had his legs broken by loan sharks, left to rot in a slum. When David asked what I wanted to do with him, I simply said, "Leave him there. Some fates are worse than death." With the last loose ends tied up, I got into my car. "Take me to the Starlight Readers Foundation," I told the driver. We left the cold, concrete canyons of the financial district and headed toward the older part of the city. We pulled up to a small courtyard in front of a converted warehouse with a simple, hand-painted sign. As I got out of the car, I could hear the sounds of children laughing. The winter sun filled the small yard, where a group of kids were gathered around a young woman reading them a story. It was Claire. She had her hair in a simple ponytail and was wearing a faded red parka, crouched down among the children, her face animated as she read from a picture book. The sunlight caught the highlights in her hair, making her glow. She didn't see me. She was completely absorbed in the story. I stood by the gate just watching. In that moment, the coldness of the auction hall, the ruin of the Miller family, the pathetic image of Ava, all the darkness and calculation of the past year seemed to be purified by this simple, warm scene. A sense of peace I hadn't felt in years filled my chest. When the story was over, Claire stood up, brushing the dust from her jeans. She looked up and finally saw me. A surprised, delighted smile spread across her face, as bright and resilient as a flower blooming in the cold. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" she said, jogging over to open the gate. "I was in the neighborhood. Wanted to see how the project was coming along," I said, stepping into the yard. "It's going great," she said, excitedly pointing to a corner where volunteers were painting several old bus shelter panels. "Thanks to your help, the first book stops will be ready to launch next month. The kids are so excited." She chattered on, her eyes sparkling with passion and hope. There was no complaint about the shabby surroundings or lack of resources, only a focus on the good they were doing. "That's great," I said, looking at her face, slightly flushed from the cold but vibrant with life. An impulse took hold of me. The final chapter of my revenge was written. It was time to start a new book. "Are you free tonight?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. "I know a great little bistro. They make an amazing soup. It's cold out. It'll warm you up." Claire's eyes widened slightly in surprise. A faint blush rose on her cheeks. She bit her lip for a second, then her bright, confident smile returned. "I'd love that," she said. "I'm starving." The winter sun shone down on us. From the small courtyard behind us, the sound of children's laughter floated on the cold air, as clear and bright as music. The shadows of the past were finally receding, and a new life, full of warmth and hope, was just beginning. Chapter 9. Time flows on, silently washing away the past. Winter gave way to spring, and the city bloomed with new life. A full year had passed since the wedding that changed everything. The Miller family was now just a cautionary tale in business textbooks. Chad Miller was permanently institutionalized, a broken man lost in his own fractured mind. As for Ava, she had vanished. Rumors surfaced now and then. Someone thought they saw her working on a factory line in a small southern town. Another claimed she had fallen even further. No one really knew or cared. She was a ghost, a ripple that had long since disappeared. My life, however, had found a new, brighter course. The Starlight Readers Foundation was thriving. The small community center now had a new, bright library, and the yard was filled with kids every weekend. Claire was still the heart and soul of it all, a whirlwind of positive energy in her usual jeans and t-shirt. Our relationship had grown steadily, naturally. We were no longer Mr. Hayes and Ms. Sullivan. We were Ethan and Claire. We worked side by side on the Bookstop project. We ate tacos from a food truck after volunteer days. We debated the best ways to help the kids. She introduced me to a world that was simple, authentic, and filled with a light that slowly, patiently, healed the lingering darkness inside me. With her, I could finally take off the cold armor I had worn for so long. I could laugh without reservation, talk about my fears, and just be myself. She would look at me with those bright, understanding eyes and say, "I like you just the way you are, Ethan." And it felt good. It felt right. "Ethan, over here." Her joyful voice pulled me back to the present. I blinked. Before me was an endless expanse of turquoise water meeting a brilliant blue sky. Soft, white sand stretched out before us, and a warm, salty breeze rustled the palm trees. This was not a dream. The sun was warm on my skin. I was standing on a white sand beach, the gentle waves of the ocean lapping at the shore. I was wearing a light linen suit, and standing a few feet away from me was Claire. She looked breathtaking. Instead of a veil, a single white plumeria was tucked in her short, dark hair. Her makeup was minimal, her skin glowing. She wore a simple, elegant satin wedding dress that flowed around her in the breeze. In her hands, she held a small, whimsical bouquet of seashells and starfish. Her face was alight with a smile so radiant it outshone the sun. Her eyes, crinkled at the corners, were filled with a pure, unadulterated love. Behind her, our guests were a small, intimate group of our closest family and friends. My parents looked on, their faces filled with peace and relief. Claire's parents, a sweet, retired couple, dabbed at their eyes with happy tears. David Chun stood off to the side, a rare smile on his face. There was no ostentatious display, no crowd of fake well-wishers. Just the sun, the sea, the sand, and the woman with the warmest smile I had ever known. David, acting as our officiant, cleared his throat. "Ethan Hayes, do you take Claire Sullivan to be your wife? To have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, to love and to cherish, from this day forward." I looked into Claire's eyes. In their clear, bright depths, I saw my own reflection, and beyond it, a future that was open, honest, and full of light. "I do," I said, my voice clear and strong, carrying on the ocean breeze. "And do you, Claire?" "I do," she answered before he could finish, her voice bubbling with happy impatience. She beamed, her smile as bright as a string of pearls. Our guests laughed and applauded. David handed me the rings. They were simple, platinum bands we had designed together, engraved with our initials on the inside. I took Claire's hand. It was warm and capable, with small calluses from her years of hard work, and slid the ring onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. She then took my ring and did the same, her touch sending a gentle warmth straight to my heart. "You may now kiss the bride," David announced with a grin. Under the loving gaze of our friends and family, with the ocean and sky as our witness, I cupped Claire's face in my hands. I leaned down and gently kissed her. Her lips were soft and warm, tasting of sunshine and sea salt. It wasn't a passionate, desperate kiss, but one of serene, profound contentment. It felt like coming home. As we pulled apart, Claire rested her head against my chest, her cheeks flushed, her eyes shining. She looked up at me and whispered, her voice full of emotion, "Ethan, this time, let me be the one to cherish you for a lifetime." Her words were a balm to the last of my old wounds. I pulled her closer, resting my chin on the top of her head, breathing in the clean, sun-drenched scent of her hair. "Deal," I whispered back, my voice full of a tenderness I never knew I possessed. "We'll cherish each other." The betrayals, the hatred, the pain of the past. It had all been washed away by the tide, leaving behind a smooth, clean shore where we could start our new life together. Nearby, a photographer clicked the shutter, capturing the moment forever. Two people, standing in the sun, their faces etched with the purest, most profound happiness.